All right, Isaiah, thank you for that update. We'll catch up with you in just a few minutes. Right now, we're going to welcome our next live guest. We've got John Gallagher, our Washington correspondent, joining us today. And John, thank you for being here. We've got some interesting news coming out of the DOT, trying to almost make its own index. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah. So this was an initiative that the White House created kind of in the aftermath of the supply chain disruptions task force from last year that they used to put together to deal with the whole pandemic-related supply chain backups. And so from that idea came this data exchange where you would have the rails and trucking and maritime and drayage companies kind of voluntarily participating in providing all types of cargo data with the goal of improving improving how you forecast cargo flows, which theoretically would smooth out these supply chain kinks and ultimately bring down the cost for all the participants in the supply chain, but also consumers as well. So whenever you have the federal government looking to get information from the private sector, formally collect data from the private sector, they have to actually go to get approval from the Office of Management and Budget for that, and because OMB wants to know like what exactly type of data are you collecting, how long is it going to take the participants to supply that data and fill out forms in their work days. So today, DOT is formally requesting from OMB an emergency approval of the pilot program of this data exchange within the next 5 days. They want to get approval for the pilot to get that going. Approval within the next 5 days to get the pilot program going, and then also a 60-day approval for the longer term program itself. So the pilot program is going to be used as they call it a proof of concept for the bigger program. And so the pilot, they want to have up to 21 participants, and once that's completed, according to this approval request, they'd like to have up to 200 participants in the long-term initiative. So this whole thing was was unveiled generally back in March, and it had 18 participants, which we reported on. So you had Port of LA and out Long Beach, and you had a couple of ocean carriers, CMA CGM and MSC. There were terminal operators involved. There were importers and exporters, Land O'Lakes, Target, Albertsons. C.H. Robinson was involved from the trucking side. You also had FedEx and UPS sort of on the logistics side, and the data request today actually put a little bit more meat on what type of data they're going to be asking for, and it includes a list of the type of data for this pilot and the program was going to be purchase order forecasts, cargo bookings. They're looking also for vessels and number of vessels in transit, terminal space availability at the marine terminals, drayage truck capacity, over the road truck dispatch capacity, availability of chassis and warehouse capacity. So DOT wants to use all this to create this index of what they call demand over capacity demand index, and become a leading indicator of freight congestion and also supply chain performance. And it all sounds a little sonar-ish kind of, so a little bit of a sonar-ish feel to it.
And John, that's going to be one of my questions. We're looking at this data, and when we look at sonar, of course, it's high-frequency data as of just yesterday. Typically, when we're looking at government data sets and things like that, usually there's a bit of a delay there. You're looking at data from a month ago or 2 months ago. Does this kind of begin to be a potential issue when you're looking at some of these participants all kind of getting their data points in at a concise moment every single month, or do you see this as a potential, not a big issue at all?
No, I think there's like several issues here, and it all sorts of has to be, and there's concern about how it's actually going to work. So that's one of them, Anthony, and I'm not sure how that's going to play out. And another concern back, I think it was in April, one of the senators up on the Hill, Roger Wicker, senator from Mississippi, he sent a letter to Pete Buttigieg with a list of questions that he had for it, because he was he was supporting it, but he was also saying there's like these privacy concerns, like how is the government going to be making sure that the participants' data is private? How involved is the government going to be in sort of being the arbiter of this? Are they going to be maintaining? Is the government going to be maintaining all this information in a portal and if so, or are they just going to be kind of an exchange where it's very kind of hands off? But if so, who's going to have access? How much access? How much control? There's I think a lot of unanswered questions from this too, and I guess if you're a private company, there'd also be the concern, like, this is we're handing this data over to the government. Will one company be able to figure out a way to monetize this somehow? And if so, why would a company want to participate if there will be like third parties monetizing this data? So it'll be interesting to see how much participation they get and how this is all sort of going to play out. And then just the kind of the overall the question that you asked, I think, like, how soon will they have that data, and therefore what will be the lag time? When will it become available, and how useful will that actually be?
John, I think that's a really good point that you bring up, because I think in private industry, a lot of times folks are kind of hesitant to give away the government their data for free. Even more hesitant if there's the risk of the government turning back around and selling their data and then making a profit of it. That's just something that a lot of people don't like to do. Have there been any guarantees by the DOT about this plan saying, you know what, no, we're going to limit how we're using this data, we're going to limit just internally? Or has that just been kind of a gray area now? And will that either encourage or discourage participation, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they say that they're gonna make sure it's secure. That is the official statement. It hasn't really, they're not saying that's a gray area, but then you always have the issue of just the general issue of people trusting the government and how they use their data. So, and how secure it is going to be. I mean, DOT. If DOT is going to be running this, they've been called out by watchdogs like the GAO and the DOT's own inspector general, saying their technology is not up to snuff, and they haven't been able to kind of get a hold on any of the issues that their technology databases use to make sure the data. I don't know so much of a security issue, but I think that has come up. So if DOT is going to run this, that you would think that concern has to be solved first if they're going to make sure that if the industry is going to have confidence that their data is going to be secure and kept private.
Definitely a lot of variables to consider here. John, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We're definitely going to be interested in seeing how this one plays out.
Thanks, you guys.
We're going to have to keep a watch, as it could be now a competitor to our sonar system here at FreightWaves. But, that'll remain to be seen. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more FreightWaves Now in just a few minutes.